Alright, this is part 1 of motion presets and motion presets and buttons. So we're going to start with a new ActionScript 3.0 file. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to make layer 1 and name it buttons. And then we're going to use the rectangle tool to draw our buttons. So go ahead and choose a color. You have your rectangle options if you would like to curve the edges a little. So if around 10, 15 gives you kind of a rounded rectangle. So make some buttons. I'm going to keep it kind of small, and then I'm just going to go ahead and select it and do Control-C to copy, Control-V to paste, and Control-V one more time, using the guides to line it up. Space it out a little bit. You can use the directional keys on your keyboard in order to make small adjustments. And there's the base for our buttons. Then I'm going to use the text tool. You want to make sure to make it a contrasting color, so if you used a dark color, then choose a light color for your text. I'm going to make the first button is going to be called Bounce. Go ahead and position that. The second one is going to be Fly In. And then the third one is going to be Zoom. And, take your time a little bit, make them nice, at least kind of centered. Now we need to actually turn these into buttons. So I'm going to click and drag across this first one, Bounce, and go up to Modify, Convert to Symbol. And this shows up. The type needs to be switched to button, and then the name will coincide with the button. So Bounce, okay. Do that again with Fly In. So click and drag across the whole thing, go to Modify, Convert to Symbol. I'm going to call this one Fly. You want to avoid using any spaces when you name your buttons. Keep it as button, say OK. Another thing you can do is I could just click on that, hold down Shift, and click on my text, and that gets both of them as well. Modify, Convert to Symbol. This one's going to be named Zoom, and it is a button, so OK. The last thing we need to do with these buttons before we move on is we have to give them instance names. So I'm clicked on Zoom right now, and you'll see in your properties it says instance name. So I'm going to call it Zoom, but it can't be named the same as the buttons, so I'm going to do an underscore because we don't like spaces, and just do BTN. So then I do the same thing with Fly In. Just going to call it Fly underscore BTN. And then Bounce. Bounce BTN. Whoops, typo. Alright, so for right now we're done with our buttons. So I'm going to lock the layer, and I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to name it Actions. And then I like to keep my actions at the top because this is where code is going to go, and it's easier to find it if it's always at the top. So I'm going to click on buttons, and then I'm going to create my 3 new layers. So 1, 2, 3. And they're going to be named according to the animation that is going with them. So this one I'll call Bounce. The next one will be Fly. And then we will have Zoom. Now I want all of my frames, all these layers, to go all the way out to frame 90. So what the easiest thing to do is come out here to 90 and do in one click, do a click and a drag. If you click, let go, then when you click it's going to just move 1. So you want to make sure that you just click and drag so that all 5 of these layers are selected on 90. That way I can right click, insert frame. And now they all go out there. And you'll notice that buttons is the only one that's the lighter gray because all these other ones right now are blank. Now we're going to be adding some animations to each of these layers using the motion presets. But in order to do some code on the actions layer, I need to insert some keyframes. So I'm going to go to frame 29, and if you look here, when I clicked on that, it says 30, so I know I'm off. So I got to go over one more till it says 29. And I'm just going to right click, insert keyframe. And then I'm going to do the same thing at 59. So once again, I'm on 60, so I got to check 59. Right click, insert keyframe. Also remember, if you click here, I could also go to insert timeline and keyframe that way as well. Now for the bounce layer, our animation is going to go from frame 1 to frame 29. That means on frame 30, I'm going to insert a blank keyframe. That way when I add an object on the bounce layer, it is going to go from 1 to 29 and then it will stop. Now the fly layer I'm going to leave blank until frame 30, so that's why I would go to frame 30 as well and insert a keyframe. Now I could insert a blank keyframe, but since there's nothing on either layer, it will come out blank either way. Remember, the hollow circle means that there's nothing there right now. Now the fly-in animation is going to go from frame 30 to frame 59. So on the fly layer, I need to go out to 60, so frame 60, and I'm going to insert a keyframe. And then last is the zoom layer, which is going to start on frame 60. So I'm going to insert a keyframe there. Okay, so this is what your timeline should look like right now. All the hollow circles mean they're blank because there's nothing there. And this solid one means that there is. So the buttons go from frame 1 all the way to frame 90. Okay, so go ahead and lock every layer but the bounce layer. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm on the bounce layer and that I'm on frame 1. And I'm going to use the oval tool. I'm going to change the color to something a little more vibrant so I can see it. I'm going to hold down Shift and click and drag to make what is going to be my ball that's going to move, that's animated. And if you look down at the bounce layer, it is now a solid black, meaning there is content, and it stops at frame 29. Now, in order to add an animation to this, I need to select and convert it to a movie clip. So I've selected the entire object. I'm going to go up to Modify, Convert to Symbol. I'll name it Ball, and then make sure to switch it to a movie clip. And OK. Now I can add animation presets, which are right here. If yours doesn't have it for any reason, you can go to Window, and there's motion presets there as well. Default presets, and then I want you to choose any of the bounce. So you could bounce in 3D, bounce out, or bounce smoosh. So I think I'm going to do a bounce out. Go ahead and apply that. Now, of course, it comes in anywhere. It doesn't, you never know exactly where it's going to start. So I can click on this solid line and move it. And it looks best if the ball starts off the stage. We want to have frame 1 just be sitting there. So there's the ball. Okay, I actually want it to bounce onto the stage and then bounce off. So I'm going to use my free transform tool to stretch it out. And I'll move it a little bit. Want it right up to the edge so it's not going to be visible. And then I'll go ahead and I'll press play. And it bounces. And it's pretty much off stage. I'll fix it a little bit. Now, if you notice in your timeline, though, this is a whole lot longer than that first 29 frames that we told it to do. Motion presets will do that. If I was animating it on my own, it would have only been through 1 through 29. So the way to shrink it is to just go to the edge until you get that double-side black arrow and do a click and a drag back to 29. Now you'll see that these are spread apart because now this animation is going to go a lot faster. It's going to play. And there you go. So make any last minute tweaks if you want to. I am going to click and just drag it out just a little more because I want this ball to stay off stage and then when it starts and then be off of the stage when it ends. Okay, now we're going to leave bounce alone, so I'm going to lock it and go up to the fly. I'm unlocking it, and if I go to 30, the stage should be empty again because bounce ended at 29, and then fly is going to start. So if I go to the library, there's the ball, so I'll just click and drag it out. So this is my fly in animation. So in my motion presets, I'm going to choose one of the fly in. So there's a lot of them, you click and it'll show you what it's going to do. I'm partial to the fly in, pause, fly out. So I'm going to apply that one. And once again, I'm going to click on that solid line and move it so that it's a little more centered. And so as it plays, it stops for a minute almost and then flies out again. I can deselect it and then of course use, so I can make it kind of fly in from the top and then fly down. Or you can just leave it how it is. You don't have to change it. Just once again, it looks better if it starts off and then it disappears. Also though, if I look, once again, it is too long. This animation needs to end. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag so it ends at 59. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer and do zoom. So zoom is going to be empty until we get to 60. Click and drag the ball out there. I'm going to put this kind of in the center, at least as close as I can tell. Motion presets, and the zooms are at the bottom. I'm going to have mine zoom out. Zoom out 2D so it disappears completely. And I applied it. Okay, now if I look, it starts at 60. It actually ends before 90, so I could also click and drag it out. And if I wanted to, at that first keyframe, I could change the size to make it a little bigger so that it goes from being really large to zooming out to nothing. Okay. We're done for right now. This is the end of part 1. We'll come back and we'll start adding some action scripts so that we can make these buttons actually work.